Now at 7 tonight, the Coral Springs community gathers tonight to remember its Vice Mayor, Nancy Metayer Bowen. Her husband is charged with her murder.
There are no words that can truly capture the depth of this loss or the pain this organization and community are now dealing with.
The tragic discovery all came after the vice mayor failed to appear to a commission meeting Wednesday. Police said after text messages were made to her husband by the commission manager as to where she may be, investigators said Bowen responded, texted her. She's not picking up. Where is she? Her car is not at home. Investigators said Bowen confessed to his uncle that he shot his wife because he couldn't take it anymore.
I understand that we're worried about her, we're trying to find her, but we can't just break down the door. We have to have a reason, and right now there's not a reason to break down the door.
I'm going to give you a reason.
Okay.
Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her husband?
You're lying. He said no.
Her husband?
Yes.
2 words. That's all he sent. Not, I'll check on her. Not, is everything okay? 2 words from a husband whose wife wasn't answering, whose wife never missed anything, whose wife had meetings, announcements, a future. 2 words, and nobody in that conference room knew. Nobody on her team knew. Nobody in Coral Springs knew that the woman they were waiting for, the vice mayor, the scientist, the congresswoman in waiting, was already gone. And the man who sent those 2 words, he knew exactly where she was. He'd known since the night before. This is the Nancy Metayer Bowen case. And those 2 words, casual as a grocery list, written while she lay 1 floor above him, are just the beginning of what will chill you to your core. Stay with me. Nancy Metayer Bowen didn't arrive in politics the way most people do. She built toward it, deliberately, over years. Florida A&M University, then Johns Hopkins, a master's degree in health science, then the work itself, environmental justice, public sector. The kind of career that exists in the gap between policy and the people policy is supposed to protect. She moved through the offices of U.S. Senator Bill Nelson and President Barack Obama, not as a figurehead, as someone learning exactly how power operates and where it fails the communities that need it most. In 2020, she ran for the Coral Springs City Commission. Crowded field, first-time candidate. She won. And in doing so, became the first Black and Haitian American woman ever elected to that panel. 4 years later, she ran again. Nobody ran against her. By 2024, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had tapped her to serve as Florida Caribbean Vote Director for their presidential campaigns. In March 2025, the Florida Democratic Party named her Vice Chair of Haitian American Voter Engagement. She was 38 years old, and she was just getting started. Her platform: gun control, environmental protection, reproductive rights, mental health. Not abstract positions. The kind of causes shaped by living close to the consequences of their absence. She knew those consequences personally. 3 months before her death, her younger brother Donovan died by suicide. He was 26. He had survived the Parkland school shooting in 2018. Nancy had described him publicly as the sibling she felt she had to protect the hardest. She buried him in December 2025, and then she kept going. The announcement was still coming. The congressional run for Florida's 20th district. It was days away. Whatever she was carrying, she was still moving forward, which is what makes the night of March 31st, 2026, so difficult to sit with, because someone in her own home had already decided she wouldn't get there. Tuesday, March 31st, sometime around 4 p.m., Stephen Bowen called his mother. He told her he'd had a panic attack at work, said he was going to talk to Nancy about it when he got home. His mother would later tell police she had no idea there were any problems in their marriage. No tension she'd noticed, no warning she'd been given. Broward County court records reflect the same silence. No domestic violence filings, no restraining orders, no police calls to that address. Outside of 2 minor drug arrests that prosecutors never pursued, Stephen Bowen had no criminal history. Nothing in the record suggested what was about to happen inside that house. That night, according to the arrest affidavit, Stephen Bowen went to the second-floor bedroom he shared with his wife. He shot Nancy Metayer Bowen 3 times. Investigators found a pillow on the bed, burn marks along its surface, string wrapped around it. It had been fashioned into a makeshift silencer, positioned to muffle the sound. Someone thought about the neighbors. Someone thought about time. Someone thought about what happens after. That's not a crime of passion. That is a calculation. And after the shooting, Stephen Bowen went downstairs and slept. His Instagram bio, public and unchanged, read 3 words at the time investigators pulled it. God, husband, armed. He had posted videos of himself at tactical shooting ranges, not once, repeatedly. The kind of content that reads differently once you know what came next. Nobody flagged it. Nobody had reason to, yet. There is one detail prosecutors have not fully addressed publicly. The specific conversation Stephen Bowen had with his mother at 4 p.m., the panic attack, the plan to talk to Nancy, sits 4 to 6 hours before the shooting. What happened in that house between that call and those 3 shots has not been entered into the public record. What happened in that conversation with Nancy, if it happened at all, remains unknown. By morning, her colleagues were calling. Her calendar was full, and Stephen Bowen was already moving. Nancy Metayer Bowen did not miss meetings. That was simply not something she did. And so when she didn't appear for the scheduled city commission meeting that Wednesday morning, the people who knew her noticed immediately. Not eventually. Immediately. An hour in, a city staffer texted her husband. Routine, practical. Can she call in? 2 words came back. Texted her. A friend of Nancy's went further. She called Stephen directly. She would later tell investigators that something in that call didn't sit right. She couldn't point to a single thing he said. It was the texture of it, the tone. She contacted police. Nancy's mother was also making calls, reaching out to Stephen's parents, asking them to go check the house. 2 separate people, from 2 separate directions, both moving toward the same address at the same time, neither knowing what was waiting inside. At 10 a.m., the Coral Springs Police Chief Brad Mock authorized a welfare check. A detective approached the exterior of the home first. Standard procedure.
This is being investigated as a domestic violence incident. Her husband, Stephen Bowen, is in our custody.
Except what he found wasn't standard. Damage to the outside of the structure consistent with projectile impact, visible from the outside, from the street. SWAT forced entry. They found Nancy Metayer Bowen in the upstairs bedroom. 3 spent shotgun shells near her body. A preliminary examination identified a gunshot wound to her shoulder. The makeshift silencer had muffled the sound well enough that no neighbor had called anything in. The house had been quiet all night.
Calvin, Nicole, I want to take you live to some helicopter video. This is over Coral Springs. This is near 127th, and you can see that there is crime scene tape right in front of that home, along with at least 2 police cruisers. And then to the left of the screen, you can see that there is that mobile command unit on scene as law enforcement pieces together the death of Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen, who we understand is the center of...
While officers were still processing the scene, a 911 call was coming in from somewhere else entirely. The caller was Owen Small, Stephen Bowen's uncle.
I understand that we're worried about her, we're trying to find her, but we can't just break down the door. We have to have a reason, and right now there's not a reason to break down the door.
I'm going to give you a reason.
Okay.
Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her
I said,
husband?
"You're lying." He said, "No."
Her husband?
Yes.
On the recording, he is heard telling the operator to have officers break down the door by whatever means necessary. He already knew something was wrong. He knew because Stephen had come to him that morning and asked him to hold on to a shotgun for a couple of weeks. Owen Small asked his nephew directly, "Did you shoot someone?" Stephen Bowen said yes. He shot his wife 3 times, then he went downstairs and slept. Owen Small called 911, but Stephen Bowen was already gone, and surveillance cameras across Broward County were quietly tracking exactly where. Stephen Bowen was 40 years old, licensed radiology technician, active credentials, employed at Delray Medical Center, a hospital, a place people go when they are most vulnerable, staffed by people trusted to help them. On the Florida Division of Corporation's website, he was listed as Chief Operating Officer of Men of St. Luke, a nonprofit built around fellowship and discipleship, brotherhood. The organization had roots going back to 2009, originally registered as the Most Worshipful Union Grand Lodge of Florida, St. Luke Lodge number 530, a Masonic organization, statewide. He was, by every public-facing measure, a man embedded in community, in faith, in service. He married Nancy in November 2022. On their anniversary, she posted about it publicly. 3 years of building, dreaming, and loving each other through everything. Her words, public, warm, no indication of anything beneath the surface. And that is precisely what makes this profile so difficult to reconcile. Because the man Nancy described publicly was the same man whose Instagram bio read, at the time investigators pulled it, God, husband, armed, in that order. A self-description he chose, a sequence he arranged. He posted tactical shooting range videos regularly, not as a hobby he kept private, publicly, repeatedly, the kind of content that accumulates quietly until the context changes, and then it reads entirely differently. No one in their social circle reported visible problems. No friends came forward with stories of tension or outbursts. No family members described a marriage in trouble. Even his own mother, the woman he called at 4 p.m. the day of the shooting to discuss a panic attack, told investigators she had no knowledge of any marital issues, which raises a question prosecutors have not yet answered publicly. If there were no visible warning signs, no arguments anyone witnessed, no pattern anyone documented, what was Stephen Bowen carrying quietly? And for how long? Because premeditation doesn't appear overnight. The pillow, the string, the silencer fashioned before the trigger was pulled. That kind of preparation has a timeline. It started somewhere, and the answer to where may be the most critical thing a jury will need to understand. This case is still developing and new details are surfacing fast. Subscribe now. We are tracking every court update, every piece of evidence, every new development as it breaks. Stephen Bowen had a plan. It just wasn't a good one. He removed the license tag from his truck before leaving. That detail matters because it tells you he understood he was being looked for. He knew the timeline. He knew what was coming, and he still thought he could move through Broward County undetected. He couldn't. License plate readers along SR7 and US and 441 in Plantation had already flagged his vehicle. Surveillance cameras were building a map of his movements in real time. Where he'd been, which direction he was heading, how long he'd been moving. Investigators tracked his pickup to an apartment complex at 551 Northwest 42nd Avenue in Plantation. They held back and watched. A man came out to meet him, a fellow Freemason. He thought they were meeting to discuss an upcoming lodge gathering. He had no idea what Stephen Bowen had done the night before. No idea what was in the bag being handed to him. It was a shotgun bag.
Stephen Bowen was eventually cornered by cops at an apartment complex in Plantation, where they found his F-150 pickup truck. In fact, police towed away several vehicles tied to the case. It's also where officers handcuffed and arrested Stephen.
We looked out the window and SWAT cars, cop cars, everything just everywhere, guns drawn.
As police moved in, Stephen Bowen looked up. 5 words. "Oh, they're here for me." Not, "What's happening?" Not, "Is something wrong?" He didn't ask a single question, because he already knew every answer. Those 5 words, spoken before a single officer addressed him, were the closest thing to a confession he would offer in that parking lot. But he had already offered a fuller one, hours earlier, to his uncle.
Investigators believe that Bowen also visited this home in Lauderdale Lakes after the shooting to drop off a rifle to an unsuspecting uncle and to allegedly make a startling admission.
Owen Small had asked him directly, "Did you shoot someone?" Stephen said yes, 3 times, then went downstairs and slept. Owen asked why. "I couldn't take it anymore." 6 words, no elaboration, no context offered. Just 6 words to explain the premeditated killing of a woman 3 days from announcing her congressional campaign. He told Owen he had an attorney meeting in 40 minutes. Then he left on his own. He didn't make it to that meeting. The Broward Sheriff's Office apprehended him at the Landmark Towers apartment complex. He invoked his right to an attorney almost immediately upon arrest. By 2:35 p.m. on April 1st, 2026, Stephen Bowen was in custody. But what prosecutors found when they started assembling the evidence would make the arrest look like the simple part. First-degree premeditated murder, tampering with physical evidence, those are the charges. And the evidence behind them is layered in a way that makes each piece harder to explain away than the last. Start with the pillow. Burn marks on the fabric. String wrapped around the barrel. A makeshift silencer, constructed before the trigger was pulled. This is the detail that prosecutors will return to repeatedly in that courtroom, because it collapses any argument about impulse or rage. You don't fashion a silencer in the middle of a breakdown. You do it when you've already decided what's going to happen next, when you've thought about the sound, the neighbors, the window of time you need before anyone comes looking. That pillow is premeditation made physical. Then, the scene itself. 3 spent shotgun shells, blankets and garbage bags used to conceal the body, projectile damage visible on the exterior of the home, from the street, which is what stopped the detective during the welfare check before SWAT ever made entry. He tried to contain it. He didn't. The digital evidence runs parallel. Surveillance footage, license plate reader data building a time-stamped map of every move he made after leaving that house. His own social media, publicly posted, never deleted, documenting a sustained, deliberate relationship with firearms. Then the statements, the 2-word text, the parking lot, the confession to Owen Small. 4 separate moments where Stephen Bowen's own words place him at the center of this case. Prosecutors don't need to speculate about motive or opportunity. He provided both, voluntarily, repeatedly, across several hours. A judge reviewed this at his first appearance and denied bond without hesitation. Then came the development that no one anticipated. The Broward County Public Defender's Office filed to withdraw. Their reason: multiple members of their office had personal and professional relationships with Nancy Metayer Bowen. They are ethically precluded from representing the man charged with killing her. Stephen Bowen cannot afford private counsel. As of April 7th, 2026, he has no confirmed legal representation, no attorney, no trial date, a first-degree murder charge, and no one legally obligated to defend him yet. That is where this case sits right now. And the community that Nancy built her career serving has not been quiet about it. By the time Coral Springs Police Chief Brad Mock stepped in front of cameras, the word had already spread. He confirmed it directly. This was a domestic violence investigation. He thanked the multiple agencies that responded. He kept it professional, measured, the way law enforcement does when the victim is someone everyone in the room knew personally. City Manager Catherine Givens did not keep it measured. She called Nancy the light in every room she entered. Not a figure of speech. A description of something people had actually witnessed, repeatedly, over years. Florida Democratic Party Chair Nikki Fried had seen Nancy 2 weeks before her death at a leadership summit. They had embraced. Fried remembered her as a brilliant barrier breaker. 2 weeks. 14 days between that moment and this press conference. State Representative Christine Hunchofsky of Parkland didn't speak at the podium as a colleague. She was there as a close personal friend. She stood in the same city where Nancy's brother had survived a mass shooting 8 years earlier. The weight of that was not lost on anyone present. City Commissioner Joshua Simmons said the commission was now incomplete. Not diminished, not changed. Incomplete. as if a structural piece had been removed and the thing could no longer hold its shape. Nancy's mentee, Christelle Louisdor, said that every conversation with Nancy circled back to the same question: what are we going to do to help people? Not what Nancy was going to do, what they were going to do. Together, U.S. Representative Jared Moskowitz confirmed publicly what those closest to her already knew. Nancy had been actively preparing her congressional announcement before she was killed. On April 3, 2026, 2 days after her body was found, people gathered on the steps of Coral Springs City Hall with candles. The seat she had held was empty behind them, and the question that nobody at that vigil could answer, the one that sits underneath every tribute and every statement, is the same one that will eventually have to be answered in a courtroom. Why? Here is what the record shows. Intimate partner violence is one of the leading causes of death for women in the United States. Not strangers, not random crime, partners, people inside the home, people who know the schedule, the routine, the layout of the bedroom. And in the majority of those cases, there is no prior report, no restraining order, no call log, no paper trail that would have flagged anything in advance. This case fits that pattern exactly. Stephen Bowen was a licensed healthcare professional, a faith leader, the COO of a nonprofit built on brotherhood. Nothing in his public profile pointed toward what investigators found in that bedroom, which is precisely what makes the profile dangerous, not unusual. Dangerous. Nancy had already survived things that would have stopped most people entirely. The shadow of Parkland, watching her brother carry that weight for 8 years, burying him in December, and then getting back up and moving toward the announcement anyway. She was 48 hours away. That timing has not been addressed by prosecutors publicly. They have not stated whether the proximity of her congressional announcement to her death is coincidence or relevant to motive. That distinction, if it exists, may be the most consequential thing a jury is asked to decide. Because I couldn't take it anymore explains nothing. It is not a motive. It is a sentence with the motive removed, and until a trial forces the full picture into a courtroom, that gap stays open. Nancy Metayer Bowen deserved a congressional race. She deserved the announcement. She deserved the fight she had spent years building toward. What she got instead is a case number in Broward County, and a community still waiting for answers. On the morning of April 1st, 2026, a conference room in Coral Springs sat half full. Her seat was empty. Her calendar was full. And the man who knew exactly why she wasn't coming sent back 2 words and went about his morning. Stephen Bowen is in Broward County Jail. No bond, no trial date, no confirmed legal representation as of this week. A first-degree murder charge and a public defender's office that is ethically prohibited from touching his case. Nancy Metayer Bowen was 38 years old, Florida A&M graduate, Johns Hopkins alumni, environmental scientist, legislative staffer, commissioner, vice mayor, vice chair of Haitian American voter engagement, Caribbean vote director for 2 presidential campaigns, a woman who buried her brother in December and still showed up in January, a woman 3 days from the biggest announcement of her life. She didn't get to make it. The case is open, the courtroom is waiting, and somewhere inside a Broward County jail cell, the only person who knows what happened between 4 p.m. and midnight on March 31st has said 4 words and gone silent. I couldn't take it anymore. That is not an answer. That is the beginning of one. We will be here when the rest of it comes out. If this case matters to you, subscribe. Every court date, every new filing, every development as it breaks. We cover it completely, and we cover it first. Join a community that refuses to let cases like Nancy's fade. Subscribe now and turn on notifications.